Hello, Meoni here, and welcome to another news roundup for the week of the 4th of January 2018. The week has been slow in terms of solid information on anything 4.2 related, but a series of threads posted by the Redditor Carrier of Light consolidate a series of in-game questions and answers game director Naoki Yoshida was asked on his in-game visits to various servers in-game. A lot of the questions are pretty uninspiring, however a select few are pretty interesting. If you want to check out the full posts, there will be a link in the description as usual for your convenience. So out of the myriad of questions asked, one of the more interesting was a series of content related questions. When will we see the next relic weapon? The weapons and armor will come out at the same time Eureka is released. The key point there is armor and weapons on a question about relics. So this somewhat seems to confirm a relic armor set, but also at the same time a relic weapon, which I don't think a lot of people actually guessed. Eureka is one of those mysteries that we really don't have that much on paper, and whenever asked about it, the dev team like to lead off from the topic, stating that to show a small element would just not do the content justice, or explain anything properly, which they want to do in an actual, situation, probably like on the live letter where they can explain it properly. So I'm guessing it's pretty big, and it's a step into the unknown for both them and us. Content like Diadem is unplayable now, It's hard to decide if we should touch it or just close it. We are currently putting all of our resources into Eureka, so Diadem is back in the line when it comes to priority. If we do close the Diadem, we'll put the minions and mounts as a reward you can obtain somewhere else. It remains to be seen how different Eureka can be than Diadem. It's often compared to it for some reason. The last live letter, I believe I remember Yoshi P mentioning it was actually nothing like Diadem because a lot of people were sort of pre-confirming that it was like it. But the way they talk about it, it certainly gives the impression of a big, wide open area, potentially instanced, and I'd be surprised if there wasn't fates within it for the progression of the actual relic armor and weapons. But, well, obviously we'll have to wait and see. Lots of new emotes are headed to 4.2, many questions asked about various sleeping emotes which were denied basically because of misuse for basically sexual acts in the game. Cutscene related emotes, Yoshi confirms another wave of those emotes are making it into the game as of 4.2, and I'd hope from in-game sources like they did with the Adventurer Squadron unlocks and not the dreaded cash shop. But we'll wait and see. Lots of glamour and character customization questions were asked and answered. The idea of implementing a way to change your character's eye colours in game with sort of like contact lenses, for example, was met with optimism and the idea that they might actually address that. They know that hair clipping on gear is an issue but can't change every single hair, but do mention if there's one specifically that you want to use but wants to be changed, they will actually look into doing that. But like all these things, they pretty much all point to people requesting them enough on the actual official forums. That's how you get responses, if enough people go there and support your question. Having to use a Fantasia just to change eye colour does pretty much suck at the moment, so it's encouraging to see they are willing to add things to the actual game to fix issues like this. So, glamour wardrobe questions, the glamour commode. With the new glamour wardrobe, do we need to carry around dyes if we want to change the colour on them? The answer is, if you have the item in your wardrobe dyed beforehand, you can use that colour when you glamour items. This is a big deal for those with questions about the glamour commode system. If people don't know about this, it was actually mentioned in the last live letter that essentially a new additional storage system will exist for a set amount of glamour items you create and set, which you can switch to whenever you like essentially, and mostly in towns I think is the limitation. Dyes were some of the more interesting snags of questions and sort of limitations, but this pretty much confirms that. There are literally hundreds of questions about various parts of the game, but as a whole a lot of it is answered by optimism and we'll think about it answers, or straight out foreshadowing for the next part of the live letter when people try to ask the big questions, due to happen in late January. The link to the questions, like I say, is in the description. It's a bit vague, so don't expect much there. I advise you to go along and check these out if you have some spare time, but moving on. In other news, Final Fantasy XIV got an updated user license agreement, which now has the addition of Eorzea Symphony tracks from the new album on Blu-ray and album CD, listed as things you are allowed to play on the Bard's Perform actions in-game. If you're unfamiliar, since the release of the Bard Perform abilities in 4.15, people have made a variety of hand-played songs, which you have to play, individually note by note, in-game on the harp, covering many different genres and styles from within Final Fantasy games and other pop culture sources. But the materials usage license has been enforced on YouTube, and essentially you can get a copyright strike or monetization dispute if you upload anything they haven't pre-approved in the materials usage license agreement that you can find a link to in the description. The agreement prohibits pretty much everything apart from Final Fantasy XIV related music, with the exception of Answers and Dragon Song also being prohibited. This new addition of tracks you can do covers of is welcome, but honestly a lot of it is just stuff that's already in the game, just orchestrated, so I don't really see much point to it. If you were to compare to other games that do music systems, there really seems to be some kind of highly overly protective layer of copyright protection on Final Fantasy XIV. Arcade, for example, not exactly the most shining of examples, doesn't seem to enforce their system, and the range of instruments and accuracy of the songs literally being played off of music sheets in-game automatically are much more likely to infringe copyright, yet don't seem to, or at least we don't know anything about it, and they don't make a big deal about it. MMO music systems in-game have been around for ages, in games like Lotro, Mabinogi, etc. It's good to see that Square Enix is doing something about copyright that they want to enforce, but when it comes to enforcing things that actually negatively impact on the actual game, like botting, then they seem much less capable. Either way, this update adds a few new tracks to the mix of things we can attempt to play in public, but honestly the idea of making videos for Perform wore my excitement clean away when I couldn't even play old school Final Fantasy songs in a Final Fantasy game, but there you go. On a much more light-hearted note, pun intended, Final Fantasy XIV is listed as one of the best sellers alongside fellow Square Enix game Nier Automata for 2017. Stormblood brought a lot of people to the game, and rightfully so. It's been an incredible expansion and journey so far, and we are just about to enter it properly, just reaching the bit where we've finished the main campaign and now we're going to flesh out the storyline. It's getting exciting, but we need it pretty soon. The distance between patches can be criticised, but each of the main patches are absolutely packed every time with huge amounts of content for a varied amount of playstyles. 4.2 is just around the corner, and so is the next part of Live Letter 40, which I will of course be covering in depth on the channel, along with all new additions to the game for Final Fantasy XIV and the surrounding media with it. In the meantime, thank you kindly for watching today's video, and I will see you all next time.